A human diplomat wakes up on an alien ship, bound by living restraints, trapped by a warrior who calls him her anchor. She needs him to survive. Her enemies want him dead, and now their minds are linked in a bond that could save them, or destroy them both. As bounty hunters close in and her past hunts them down, one question remains. Is this connection salvation, or a death sentence? The deeper they dive into the bond, the more they realize some secrets were never meant to be shared. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Their silent outpost hung like a forgotten relic in the cold embrace of space, its dim corridors humming with the last whispers of a dying power grid, the air thick with the scent of oil and stale sweat as Jaren, a weary human diplomat, shuffled through the near-empty hallway, his boots clicking against the rusted metal floor. His mind still tangled in the endless debates over mining rights that had stretched late into the artificial night. The weight of exhaustion pressing down on his shoulders like a physical force. He barely noticed the flickering lights above him until they cut out entirely, plunging him into darkness, his breath catching in his throat as a sudden chill raced down his spine, then movement too fast to track, a hand clamping over his mouth, fingers cold and smooth like polished stone. A voice, low and resonant, vibrating against his ear. "Breathe and live," it commanded, the words curling around him like smoke before a sharp pain erupted at the base of his skull, the world dissolving into streaks of light and shadow as his consciousness slipped away. He woke to the sensation of something alive beneath him, a surface that pulsed rhythmically, warm and unfamiliar, the walls around him glowing faintly blue, veins of light threading through what looked like organic metal, shifting slightly as if breathing, his wrists bound by glowing tendrils that tightened when he struggled, not painful but unyielding. Across the shadowed chamber stood his captor, tall and silver-skinned, her violet eyes unblinking, her presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. She moved closer, her steps silent, her dark armor clinging to her like a second skin, braids of shimmering light cascading down her back like liquid starlight. "You're mine now," she said, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. "You will sleep beside me, or you will learn the taste of the void." Joran's heart hammered against his ribs, his mind scrambling for sense, for escape. But the ship, if it could be called that, seemed to watch him, its walls shifting subtly as if reacting to his fear. Before he could demand answers, alarms shrieked through the chamber, a harsh, pulsing sound that made the tendrils around his wrists flare brighter. Vera, she had called herself Vera, turned sharply toward a flickering screen, her expression hardening as the image of a jagged, clawed ship filled the display, its weapons humming to life. "They found us," she muttered, more to herself than to him, her fingers dancing over a console that rose from the floor like living tissue. The screen crackled and a voice, rough and dripping with malice, sliced through the air. "Surrender the outcast human or burn with her." Joran's blood turned to ice as the reality of his situation crashed over him. Trapped on an alien ship, bound to a fugitive he didn't understand, with death closing in from the void outside. The ship shuddered as another blast rocked its living hull, the walls pulsing crimson in warning, as Vera dragged Joran through the twisting corridors, her grip like iron around his wrist, the bioluminescent restraints around his ankles humming with each stumbling step he took, his breath coming in ragged gasps as panic clawed at his throat. "We won't outrun them," she hissed, her voice cutting through the chaos, her violet eyes flashing in the dim light as she shoved him into a small chamber that seemed to contract around them, the organic walls sealing shut with a wet, sucking sound, plunging them into near darkness save for the faint glow of the tendrils still coiled around his limbs. "This will hurt," she warned, her voice stripped of its usual cold precision, a rare flicker of something almost like hesitation passing over her sharp features, before she pressed her palm against his forehead, her skin burning against his, and then agony. White-hot and all-consuming as her mind tore into his, memories that weren't his own flooding his senses in a dizzying rush. He saw her as a child, small and silver, standing rigid in a line of other young warriors while a faceless instructor struck her across the face for flinching at the sound of a blaster. Emotion is weakness. The voice snarled, the words carved into her bones. He felt her years of training, the way she learned to bury every flinch, every tremor until her face became a mask of perfect stillness. Then the shift. Her first mission. The acrid smell of burning flesh as she stood over a fallen enemy. Their chest rising and falling in. Shallow, terrified breaths, the order ringing in her ears. Finish it. But her hand, usually so steady, refused to obey. And in that moment of hesitation, she was lost. The next memories came fractured, sharp as broken glass. The branding iron, searing her shoulder. The taste of blood in her mouth as she fought her way free. The endless drifting through the void with only the living ship, half mad and whispering in her dreams for company. Then, inexplicably, he saw himself, years before they'd met, standing on a sunlit platform giving a speech about peace to a crowd of disinterested diplomats. And there, lurking in the shadows, a flash of silver, her watching him with an intensity that bordered on hunger. The vision shattered as another explosion rocked the ship, Joran gasping back to the present, his body drenched in sweat, his skull throbbing as if split open. Vera's hand fell away, her breathing uneven for the first time since he'd known her. "They'll keep coming," she said, her voice raw, "unless we fight as one." Outside, the hunter's ship loomed closer, its weapons charging with a whine that vibrated through the hull. Joran's hands shook, but when he looked at her, really looked, he saw not just the predator who'd taken him, but the child who'd been broken, the soldier who'd refused to kill, the exile who'd dreamed of him across the stars. "Show me how," he said, the words tasting strange on his tongue. And as their fingers intertwined, the ship itself seemed to hold its breath, the walls humming in anticipation as the bond between them flared to life, two minds becoming a single weapon aimed at the darkness beyond. The smuggler's station loomed ahead like a festering wound in the fabric of space, its jagged metal spires twisting at unnatural angles, patched together from the carcasses of dead ships and threaded with pulsing red lights that throbbed like a slow heartbeat. The docking bay swallowed them whole, the air thick with the stench of burnt fuel and something distinctly organic, something rotting. Joran's skin crawled as he followed Vera through the crowded thoroughfare, his human frame drawing sidelong glances from the hulking figures that lurked in the shadows, their many-eyed stares tracking his every move. The bioluminescent restraints had faded to near invisibility, but still hummed against his skin, a constant reminder of their fragile truce. Vera moved like liquid shadow ahead of him, her silver skin now concealed beneath a tattered cloak, her violet eyes hidden behind a visor that reflected the garish neon signs advertising everything from black market augments to sentient weaponry. "Stay close," she murmured, the words barely audible over the din of screeching machinery and guttural bartering. The crowd parted before her instinctively, creatures twice her size stepping aside with surprising deference, their nostrils flaring as if they could smell the violence clinging to her like a second skin. They reached a stall buried deep in the station's bowels, its counter littered with strange mechanical organs that pulsed weakly in glass jars. The vendor, a hunched figure with too many joints in its fingers, cocked its head at Vera's approach. "Flame Legion," it rasped, the word dripping with equal parts reverence and disgust. "I wondered when you'd slither back." Vera didn't flinch, her hand hovering near the hidden blade at her hip. "We need passage charts," she said. "Unregistered." The creature's laugh sounded like bones breaking. "Price just tripled, outcast." Joran felt the shift in the air before he saw it, the way the surrounding noise dimmed, the way the shadows seemed to lean in closer. Vera's fingers twitched, but before she could react, a massive shape shouldered through the crowd, its armored plates scraping together with a sound like grinding teeth. "Fight or pay," it growled. A four-armed brute with a face like melted slag, its breath reeking of something chemical and sweet, the station's version of a toll collector. Vera's posture shifted imperceptibly, her muscles coiling like springs, but Joran stepped forward, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll fight." The words hung in the air for a moment before the crowd erupted into jeers and hoots, the brute's lipless mouth splitting into something resembling a grin as it turned, toward a rusted hatch that led deeper into the station's belly. The arena was little more than a crater carved into the metal floor, its edges packed with leering faces and grasping appendages. The stink of blood and sweat so thick it coated Joran's tongue. No weapons, no rules. The brute's voice boomed as it shoved him into the center, the crowd's roar rising to a fever pitch as his opponent emerged. A hulking reptilian thing with spines along its back and eyes that burned like coals. Joran's heart hammered against his ribs, but then he felt it, the faintest pressure at the base of his skull. Vera's presence threading through his mind like smoke, showing him where to step, when to duck. The fight became a blur of instinct and borrowed skill, his body moving with a grace that wasn't his own. The crowd's cheers turning to shocked silence as he landed the final blow, his fist connecting with the precise spot Vera's mind highlighted in bursts of violet light. The reptilian creature crumpled, its breath coming in wet, labored gasps. Joran stood over it, his knuckles slick with something that wasn't quite blood, the arena dead silent until the brute clapped its massive hands together once. "Human fights like Flame Legion," it grunted, tossing a small data chip at Vera's feet. "Your charts." The crowd dispersed as quickly as it had gathered, leaving Joran trembling with adrenaline, his muscles screaming in protest. Vera didn't thank him, but when her fingers brushed his wrist to check for damage, they lingered a heartbeat too long. The vendor handed over the charts with considerably less attitude now, its many eyes darting between them with newfound wariness. "They'll be coming for you," it whispered, nodding toward a flickering security feed that showed a squadron of sleek angular ships docking on the station's upper levels, ships marked with the distinct sigil of the Zoroi High Command. Vera's jaw tightened as she grabbed Joran's arm, pulling him into the maze of back corridors, their pace just shy of a run. "The bond," she said between gritted teeth. "It's grown too strong, they can track it now." Joran's stomach dropped as the implications sank in, the restraints around his wrists flaring brighter, as if in response to his rising panic. They ducked into a dimly lit alcove, the walls pressing. In around them, Vera's breath warm against his cheek as she leaned close. "There's a way to sever it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it would take pieces of us with it." Outside, the sound of booted feet echoed through the metal halls, getting closer. The hunt was on, and the station had suddenly become a very small place to hide. The frozen planet hung like a pale jewel against the blackness of space, its surface scarred with jagged ice formations that glittered under the dim light of a dying sun. Their ship descended through the thin atmosphere with a shudder, the living hull groaning in protest as it adjusted to the extreme cold. Joran pressed his forehead against the viewport, his breath fogging the glass as he took in the stark landscape below. A sprawling complex of obsidian towers rose from the ice, their angular forms stark against the endless white. The ancestral home of Vera's people, a place she had fled years ago and now returned to with a human in tow. The bond between them pulsed like a second heartbeat, stronger now than ever, a connection that had grown beyond mere survival into something deeper, something neither of them fully understood. Vera stood rigid at the controls, her silver skin tinged blue in the planet's eerie light, her fingers gripping the console too tightly, betraying the calm she fought to maintain. "They already know we're here," she said, her voice flat, and as if summoned. A transmission crackled through the ship's speakers, a voice like grinding ice demanding their immediate surrender. The tribunal would not wait. The words hung heavy in the air. Joran's stomach twisted as the ship touched down, the landing strut sinking slightly into the snow. The hatch opened with a hiss, releasing a blast of frigid air that stole his breath. Outside, a circle of armored figures awaited them, their faces hidden behind ornate masks, their weapons humming. With restrained energy, Vera stepped out first, her back straight, her head high, the very image of the warrior she had once been. Joran followed, his boots crunching in the snow, the cold biting through his thin clothing. The tribunal elders stood on a raised platform, their robes the color of old blood, their eyes like chips of flint. The tallest of them spoke, his voice carrying across the frozen plain. "You return with corruption in your veins, outcast, and dare to bring it before us." Vera didn't flinch. "The bond is real," she said, and we will prove it. The elder's lip curled. Then face the trial of echoes. The crowd that had gathered murmured, a sound like wind through dead leaves. The trial was simple in its cruelty. Joran would face their champion in combat, but not with weapons, not with strength, with the bond itself. The arena was a circle of black stone, its surface etched with ancient runes that glowed faintly underfoot. The champion, a towering figure clad in armor that seemed to drink in the light, stepped forward, his presence like a physical weight. Joran's mouth went dry, but then Vera's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Remember," she whispered, "we are one." The champion attacked without warning, his movements a blur, but Joran wasn't alone. The bond flared to life, brighter than ever, their minds merging completely. For the first time, the world dissolved into a rush of shared sensation. Joran saw through Vera's eyes, felt her memories as his own, the pain of her training, the loneliness of her exile, the quiet hope she had carried like a secret. And Vera saw his, the warmth of a human childhood, the weight of responsibility, the stubborn kindness that had led him to her. The champion's fist connected with Joran's, ribs sending him sprawling, but the pain was distant, secondary to the flood of connection surging between them. The runes on the arena floor ignited, their glow intensifying as the bond poured outwards, filling the space with echoes of their shared past. The tribunal elders recoiled as the images swirled around them, the truth of the bond undeniable. The champion hesitated, his weapon lowering slightly as he too was caught in the tide of memory. "This is not corruption." Vera's voice rang out, strong and clear. "This is what you tried to erase." The elders exchanged glances, their certainty wavering. The tallest stepped forward, his mask cracking slightly as he reached out, his fingers brushing the edge of the glowing bond. For a moment, the entire world held its breath. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the elder's mask fell away, revealing a face lined with something almost like regret. "The trial is complete," he said, his voice softer now. "The bond is recognized." The crowd erupted into whispers. The champion bowed his head and stepped back, the tension in the air dissolving like mist. Vera's shoulders slumped slightly, the first sign of relief she had shown since their arrival. Joran squeezed her hand, his own exhaustion threatening to pull him under. But there was no time to rest. The elders turned away, already murmuring amongst themselves. Their world irrevocably changed. The ship awaited them, its hull humming softly as they boarded, the hatch sealing behind them with a finality that felt like a new beginning. As they lifted off, the frozen planet shrinking below them, the bond between them settled into a quiet, steady rhythm, no longer a thing to be feared, but a thread woven into the fabric of their beings. The stars stretched out before them, endless and uncharted, and for the first time they faced them not as captor and prisoner, not as outcast and diplomat, but as something new, something neither of them could name. But both understood. The ship's systems flickered as it jumped, to warp, the last sight of the tribunal's world vanishing in a streak of light, leaving only the quiet hum of the bond and the promise of whatever lay ahead.